now we're going to talk about negative space. Negative space refers to the shape around the object. It's a really tricky thing for your brain because you have to take nothingness and turn it into a shape and then use that shape in order to help you with your composition. Before we move on, let's talk about that word composition. Right now, when we're just working on moving an image to a drawing, our composition just refers to where those puzzle pieces are on the paper. As we move on in your art career, composition will refer to how we arrange our photo and our drawing in order to make it more pleasing or to prove a point. So let's look back at our stool. The negative space we kind of referred to earlier, but it's the shape around the object. You can see here the negative space is a trapezoid. Over here, it's a parallelogram. We have a triangle over here, and we have a triangle right here as well. So you're taking the area around, you're making it into a shape, and you're figuring out how those shapes relate to each other. For instance, back at our stool, you can see that this shape here has a high point. Next to it on this trapezoid, it also has a high point. Then you can take your pencil and measure, are those actually equal with each other? Or is there a little bit more of an angle there? And that's gonna help you figure out where that stool will go on your paper. Let's practice it together. So we have a chair here. We're gonna start mapping out all of the negative space. And it's whatever works easier for you. Sometimes the bigger shapes are easier to do first, sometimes it's the smaller shapes. I like to do the shapes closest to the edge of the drawing frame because that usually helps me have another little bit of an anchor. You can also create more negative shapes within the negative shape. Let me show you what I mean by that. So for instance, we have this bottom of this chair right here, and it kind of loops around and turns into this triangle shape on the side. That shape in itself, it's almost like a pipe or something, would be kind of hard to draw. But what I can do is take this end of the leg and draw a straight line down here. Now the negative space is just this almost rectangle with a kind of angular top. And we have a little bit of an easier shape over here, still with the skinny triangle. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna shade in the negative space on the image to the right. When we shade it in, we're actually gonna have an inverted image. So it's gonna look like everywhere that you see that's white right now is gonna be the shaded area, and everywhere that the chair is just going to be blank. So I'm gonna do just like I did with the same squares before, where I'm gonna make some indicator marks on the outside of my drawing reference just to help me know where the halfway points are. And that way I can use the side of my reference as fractions. Which already look like I'm a little bit uneven, which is fine, you just adjust. That's why remember, we're always gonna start off really light and we can make changes there. We're always gonna start off really light and then we can get heavier with our marks as we get more confident. So my favorite little mark in this whole one is this tiny little triangle right here at the top because I think that's the easiest to do. And as you're drawing, I want you to utilize the side of your pencil rather than the tip as much as you can, because when we're working in negative space, we're working in shape, not line. So try not to look at the edges of the chair, try to look at the space as a shape next to the chair. So over here, I can tell that there's an area outside the chair. I'm gonna use the side of my pencil and I'm gonna start shading in. And when I'm shading, I'm kind of looking to find the edge. So I'm gonna come over here and I think the edge is about here. And I'm gonna start filling in that shape. Remember, still working really light so that we can make changes as we go. This part doesn't have to be pretty because it's just another exercise in seeing. We're not trying to make a drawing that looks like a final drawing. We're just training our brain to see in shape instead of line. And it's very small, but if you look at the very top of the back of the chair, there's actually a little tiny bit of negative space. We can kind of curl around this way and just shade in there. Now I'm gonna look at this negative space on the side and try to figure out where's the very top of that triangle. And I think it's very small, but it's about here. There's a slight indent here, but I'm gonna worry about that in a little bit. I'm just gonna look at where the bottom of the chair is. And then start my triangle from here. So I'm using lines as kind of indicator marks, but again, I'm starting to think in terms of shape rather than line. And feel free to get outside of your drawing area a little bit. This doesn't have to be really neat to start with. I really want to emphasize to you guys that you're going to start off messy and loose, and you refine as you go. Here's where that little indent was. And then I'm going to march my way up to there. Now that I have the bottom of one chair leg, I can use that to help me find this rectangle that we figured out earlier with the curvy top. Now I can see, I'm gonna look at my angles again, just like we did earlier. I'm measuring the angle here, measuring the angle here. I think I do need to bring up this side of that shape a little bit more. And now I can kind of use that negative space to get this little rectangle above it. I almost could go ahead and jump ahead and get this shape right here, but I'm gonna keep working the chair legs first and then I'll come back and get it. There's only a little hint of space under this chair leg. And then I'm gonna do just like I did earlier, where I'm gonna draw some straight lines down and I'm gonna break this up into smaller shapes. So now I can see that this line starts here and we're just adding in another shape. Now that I have the bottom of the chair in place, I'm gonna go ahead and come over to the top, which I feel like is a little trickier than the bottom was because there's fewer shapes, which is something that we're gonna talk about again later. But with fewer shapes, it's harder to measure the angle between them, and it's actually harder to make your drawing more accurate. So I know that this line is parallel to the side here. There's a slight little divot in the middle, or a little point. And then finally, this little oval at the top. And if I wanted to be particular, you can go back to your CM skills and you can kind of mark where it is up top. Mark right here, making sure that these lines are spaced out the same way these lines are. And then you can use that to help figure out where your oval is. Which I'm glad I did that because I do think it was going to be in the wrong spot. And for this drawing exercise, this is all you need to do. You can go back and refine it and make it perfect, but the idea is not to make a perfect recreation. It's just to start seeing in that negative space rather than seeing the positive space or to see the outside contour lines of the object.